Let me take you inside what's actually unfolding right now. Trump made his announcement on Truth Social, the platform he uses to communicate directly with millions of Americans. His message was clear and aggressive. He stated that the United States would immediately stop all financial support to Nigeria. But he didn't stop there. He went further, saying America may very well enter what he called a now disgraced country with guns blazing. His goal? To completely eliminate what he describes as Islamic terrorists who are slaughtering Christians across the nation. The language Trump used was deliberately intense. He claimed he'd already given orders to the Department of War, formerly known as the Department of Defense, to start preparing for possible military operations. Then came the chilling description of how any attack would unfold. Trump said if American forces move in, the operation will be fast, vicious, and sweet. 3 words that suggest overwhelming force delivered quickly. But before we go further, we need to understand who's pushing back against this narrative. Nigeria's president, Bola Tinubu, didn't wait long to respond. He released an official statement rejecting Trump's characterization of his country. Tinubu explained that since taking office in 2023, his administration has actively worked with both Christian and Muslim leaders. He emphasized that the security problems Nigeria faces affect people of all faiths and come from multiple regions. Most importantly, Tinubu pushed back hard against the idea that Nigeria is religiously intolerant, saying this description doesn't match the reality of the nation. Now here's where things get really interesting. I want you to hear from someone who's actually studied this crisis in depth. Bulama Bukarti is a Nigerian human rights lawyer who specializes in conflict analysis across Africa. When asked directly whether Trump's claim of a Christian genocide is accurate, his answer was immediate and unambiguous. Absolutely not. A flat no. Bukarti explained that all available data contradicts the genocide narrative. He called it a dangerous far-right talking point that's been circulating for years, and now the President of the United States is amplifying it. According to Bukarti, this isn't just inaccurate, it's actively harmful. The false narrative divides Nigerians along religious lines and makes the security situation worse, not better. So what does the actual data show? This is crucial. Bukarti pointed to research he conducted for his PhD, using information from the Nigeria Security Tracker. This database is maintained by the Council on Foreign Relations, a respected international organization. The numbers tell a story that's very different from what Trump described. Let's look at Boko Haram, the most notorious terrorist group operating in Nigeria. According to the data, Boko Haram attacked 83 churches. That's a horrifying number. But in the same period they also attacked 72 mosques. The terrorists weren't discriminating based on religion when choosing their targets. They were hitting both. But the death toll reveals something even more surprising. More than 2,000 Muslims were killed in mosque attacks. The number of Christians killed in church attacks was around 1,500. Now, Bukarti was quick to clarify something important. He's not saying one group of deaths matters more than the other. Every single civilian killed in these attacks represents a tragedy. The point is that the data doesn't support the idea that only Christians are being targeted. Think about what this means. These terrorist groups claim they're fighting in the name of Islam, but they're killing more Muslims than Christians. They're not actually following Islamic teachings, they're twisting and misinterpreting religious texts to justify violence against anyone in their path. The pattern of attacks reveals their true strategy. Boko Haram and similar groups don't just target religious buildings. They bomb markets where people gather to buy food. They attack schools where children study. They strike anywhere civilians congregate, regardless of who those civilians are. The goal isn't religious purification. The goal is terror itself, creating so much fear and chaos that normal life becomes impossible. This raises an obvious question. If the Nigerian government knows this is happening, what have they been doing to stop it? Bukarti addressed this directly, and his answer reveals another layer of complexity. Over the past decade, Nigeria's government has spent billions of dollars on security. Billions. They've claimed to purchase modern weapons and completely restructure the country's military and security systems to fight terrorism. They've announced reforms and new strategies. Yet despite all this money and all these promises, the violence keeps escalating. What? Bukarti identified several problems. First, there's the issue of governance. Nigeria is a massive country with a huge population, and many regions lack effective government control. Second, corruption eats away at security spending. Money that should go toward equipment and training disappears into private pockets. Officials claim to buy weapons that never arrive, or they purchase inferior equipment and pocket the difference. Third, there's negligence. Some government officials simply don't prioritize addressing the crisis effectively. They might make announcements and hold press conferences, but actual implementation falls short. And fourth, the enemy itself is resilient and adaptive. These aren't conventional armies that hold territory and wear uniforms. They're guerrilla fighters who strike suddenly and then vanish into remote areas. Nigeria's geography makes the problem even harder. The country has vast stretches of land, forests, border regions, remote areas, where government authority barely exists. These ungoverned spaces have become safe havens for terrorist groups. They establish camps there, train fighters, plan attacks, and store weapons. Then they launch raids into cities and towns before retreating back to their hidden bases in the wilderness. Traditional military forces struggle to combat this hit-and-run style of warfare. But now let's return to Trump's threat. What would actually happen if the United States decided to intervene militarily? And would American involvement help or make everything worse? Bukarti's perspective on this is really important. He pointed out that Boko Haram and the other terrorist groups are the common enemy of all Nigerians, Muslims and Christians alike. They're killing people from both faiths, destroying communities regardless of religious makeup. The only way to defeat a common enemy is through unity. Everyone affected needs to work together. Trump's narrative does the exact opposite. By framing this as Christians versus Muslims, by suggesting that Muslims are the problem and Christians are the victims, Trump is dividing Nigerians along religious lines. He's creating or deepening suspicion between communities that need to cooperate. And who benefits when Nigerians are divided and suspicious of each other? The terrorists. They thrive on division. They want Muslims and Christians to see each other as threats rather than as fellow citizens facing the same danger. Now, Bukarti acknowledged that American assistance could genuinely help Nigeria. Modern weapons, advanced equipment, specialized training for Nigerian security forces. All of this could make a real difference in fighting terrorism. The United States has resources and expertise that Nigeria needs. But there's a massive difference between providing support and launching a unilateral military invasion. Trump wasn't talking about partnership or cooperation. He was threatening to send American troops into Nigeria without being invited, without working with the Nigerian government, without any coordination. This kind of intervention would violate Nigeria's sovereignty, the fundamental principle that countries have the right to govern themselves without outside powers imposing their will by force. History offers harsh lessons about what happens when powerful nations unilaterally invade other countries. Bukarti specifically mentioned Iraq and Afghanistan. The United States spent trillions of dollars and sacrificed thousands of American lives in those conflicts. The results? Ongoing instability, resentment toward America, strengthened extremist movements, and no clear victory. Iraq and Afghanistan became examples of how military intervention, even with good intentions, can create more problems than it solves. Does America really want to repeat those experiences in Nigeria? A country with over 200 million people, diverse ethnic groups, complex religious dynamics, and a geography that already challenges its own military forces? An American invasion would likely rally Nigerians across religious lines, not to fight terrorism, but to resist foreign occupation. Nationalist sentiment would surge. Terrorist groups could position themselves as defenders against outside aggression, potentially gaining recruits and sympathy. Bukarti argued that there's a better path forward. The United States can work with the Nigerian government rather than threatening it. American officials can engage with Nigerian Muslims and Christians who are living through this violence every day. They can support local initiatives, fund development projects that address root causes of extremism, and provide security assistance in ways that respect Nigerian sovereignty. But none of this works if America's approach consists of threats posted on social media and talk of invasion. There's another angle worth considering. Why is Trump making these statements now? Nigeria has been dealing with Boko Haram and other terrorist groups for over a decade. The security crisis isn't new. The attack patterns aren't new. So why is the President of the United States suddenly threatening military action? Some analysts believe this connects to domestic American politics. There's a constituency within Trump's political base that responds strongly to narratives about Christians being persecuted globally, particularly by groups claiming Islamic motivations. By positioning himself as the defender of Christians worldwide, Trump appeals to these voters. The actual situation on the ground in Nigeria, the data showing Muslims are also victims, the complexity of the security challenges, becomes secondary to the political message. Others point to Trump's history of viewing international relations through a transactional lens. He's previously threatened or actually cut aid to countries that don't align with his preferences. The threat to Nigeria fits this pattern, using American financial and military power as leverage to force other nations to act according to American wishes. But there's a real human cost to this approach. Right now, Nigerian communities are dealing with genuine terror. Families worry whether their children will come home from school safely. People avoid crowded markets because they might be bombed. Farmers can't work their fields in some regions because of security threats. Religious leaders try to keep their congregations safe while maintaining services and community support. These Nigerians don't need false narratives that divide them further. They don't need to be told that their neighbors of different faiths are the problem. They need effective security measures, good governance, economic opportunities that give young people alternatives to extremism, and international support that actually addresses the crisis rather than exploiting it for political purposes. The experts and researchers who study this crisis most carefully are saying the same things. Violence in Nigeria is real and serious. Terrorism is killing innocent people. But it's not a religious genocide targeting one group. It's a security breakdown affecting everyone, enabled by corruption, weak governance, and groups that have found ways to operate in ungoverned spaces. Military solutions alone won't fix this. You can't bomb your way to lasting peace when the underlying problems include poverty, corruption, lack of education, and political dysfunction. American missiles might kill some terrorists, but they won't address why young Nigerians join extremist groups in the first place. They won't fix the governance failures that allow these groups to operate freely. They won't build the trust between communities that's necessary for lasting stability. So here's what you need to remember from all of this. Donald Trump has threatened military action against Nigeria, claiming there's a genocide against Christians. The actual data shows something completely different. Terrorists are killing both Muslims and Christians without discrimination. The crisis is real, but it's not the religious war Trump describes. Nigeria's government has failed to stop the violence despite spending billions, hampered by corruption, weak governance, and the challenges of fighting guerrilla groups across vast ungoverned territories. American military intervention, the kind Trump is threatening, would likely make everything worse. It would divide Nigerians, undermine sovereignty, and potentially repeat the failures of Iraq and Afghanistan. Real help would look different: partnership with Nigerian authorities, support for local communities, and addressing root causes rather than just symptoms. The people suffering most from this crisis are ordinary Nigerians of all faiths who just want safety and stability. They deserve accurate representation of their situation, not politically convenient narratives that make their problems worse. Whether Trump follows through on his threats remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: the truth about what's happening in Nigeria is far more complicated than a single social media post can capture. And getting that truth wrong has consequences that could affect millions of lives. Let's hear your own thought in the comment section. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.